this started. Let's see. Recording in progress. Always a good sign when we see that it says that.
Yeah.
And people are coming into the room. So I'm just going to be talking a bit here to kind of warm up the air.
Warm up the mic.
That's right. That's important to do. So if you're coming into the room and wondering what we're talking about, it's just because we're going to make sure that all of our friends can come in here and join us.
Yeah.
So I'll start by saying that if we haven't met before, my name is Jay Frost, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you to the Philanthropy Mastermind series, brought to you, of course, by DonorSearch. You won't hear much about DonorSearch today, unless our presenter chooses to talk about it. But I do want to encourage you to take a look at them. Not only have they provided a platform for discussions like this one for the past 5+ years now, which I think is astounding. Over 500 programs, increasing numbers of those are making their way into the YouTube library, where this recording will be in a few days. But also, they just have been very open to nurturing a conversation in the sector about what it means to be charitable. And that's really the basis of the products as well. So again, I'm not talking about the products today, but if you want to learn more about your donors, and I hope you do, then I encourage you to go take a look at DonorSearch after the session today. Stay with us. This is going to be well worth staying for. But they're at donorsearch.net, where you can find out all about the Mastermind series, hear all the podcasts, see recordings of things from the past, but also you can learn really who they are, what they care about. And as you'll see in a moment, this is a discussion that's going to run through everything you hear today. Is a focus on that kind of emotional intelligence, as you were saying a few minutes ago, Nancy, that's so critical to the work we do. So I'm going to get underway again and just say, once again, my name is Jay Frost. Welcome to the Philanthropy Mastermind series. I'm not repeating myself. I'm really just making sure everyone's here. And we really do want to welcome you to a discussion today with Nancy Rieves, coming back for a command performance to talk about, of course, fearless fundraising, the secrets to overcoming your fear of asking for money. And if you came here by accident, stick around, because this is a fear that if you don't have it, I guarantee you someone in your office does, or someone on your board does, and the solutions are right before us. And we're going to be hearing about them in just a moment. I want to give you a brief introduction to Nancy and then give a proper welcome mat so she can talk to you a bit about this session. I also want to make sure you know how you can engage with us today. Since we can't see or hear you, this is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting. We do want to hear from you. So the best way to do that right now is to go ahead and open up a chat and just let us know that you're here so that Nancy can see that. Just perhaps say where you're from, what kind of organization you work with. I'm going to have another question for you in a moment, but right now, just let us know that you're present. Let us know where you're coming in from, perhaps an organization that you're with. Thank you very much for trying that out. Now, after we use the chat in our discussion today, I'm going to encourage you to also use Q&A. The Q&A is a great repository for the questions that occur to you throughout. And that way, if we store them up there, we'll have the opportunity to visit those questions that aren't addressed throughout the conversation and address them all at the end of the more formal discussion. So please use the chat for now, use the Q&A for questions. And with that, a little bit about our presenter, our guest today. Nancy is a fundraising coach and the creator of Fundraising Maximized, your ultimate guide to major gift fundraising. You can learn all about her online. I'm going to encourage her to give you her her website address in a moment. She provides executive and development directors with a roadmap to raise more money through major gifts. With a proven step-by-step process, she removes the overwhelm and guides nonprofit leaders to become more confident and successful with fundraising. Before becoming a fundraising coach, she was the founding executive director of an education-related foundation, where during that 10-year period that she was there, she guided a development team to raising over $16 million for their nonprofit. She won't go into much detail about that today, but I can tell you that was a big lift, and she taught and coached a lot of people in that process, most for the first time, to achieve the level of success they did. She knows what it's like to start from square one, raise millions, and guide a team in fundraising success. And in addition to her frontline fundraising experience, she wrote her doctorate dissertation on analyzing fundraising activities. Her biggest discovery from that was too many nonprofits focus on small revenue generating activities and never get past offering fundraising events. Hence, of course, the subject of this fear of fundraising. Nancy, thank you so much for hanging out today.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here. And I will say thank you, Jay, and thank you, DonorSearch. I absolutely appreciate, as you opened with, the many conversations that they've allowed in the last, I didn't realize, 5 years. And just allowing a platform for us to have conversations like this. I think it is so important for us to come and talk in a raw way about some of these challenges that we encounter as fundraisers. So thank you, Jay, for hosting, and for DonorSearch for providing the platform. It's great.
Thank you for that too. I appreciate that, Nancy. This is, yeah, as you're saying, these can be raw topics, and they're often talked about in dry ways. You're not doing that today. So maybe the best place to start is, why choose this topic? Why is this important to you?
Yeah, it's very clear. As you shared in my intro, is I work with nonprofits. After I finished with the nonprofit that I started and ran for 10 years, raised $6 million, I started coaching and teaching nonprofits. And it was so clear that everyone I worked with, whether it was in a coaching group or one-on-one, that deep down, that underlying fear was there about asking for money. There were few that were just like, yeah, I can do that. I'm ready to go. I mean, there was just few. And if people weren't, just didn't say it out, most people didn't, but I could tell there was hesitation. And the more I work with people, it's really there. And you know, and when you work with people, they get to know you and trust you, and it comes out. I think the fear of fundraising, and when I say fear of fundraising, not just the ask, but a lot about it, a lot about the process of fundraising, there's hesitancy and there's fear. Now, there's definitely fear of the ask, that one part about asking someone. And I think it holds fundraisers back. People that there's money right in front of them, there's opportunity right in front of them, and they hold back, and they need to get out of their own way. And if we can break down what it is that's holding a person back from raising more money, be fear, then let's break it down and talk about it and put it out there, and, you know, like, talk real about it, raw. Let's just be really raw about our feelings about it, and do, you know, take a temperature check. Are we one of those who kind of am hesitant and fearful of asking for money? So I think talking about it is the best way. And then I've got tips of things to do and what I think a person can do to overcome those barriers. But I'd like to know what people in this group.
Right.
Yeah. So
let's do that temperature check. So I haven't been looking at the chat yet, but I can see it. A lot of people are saying hi. So first of all, thank you everybody for doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can use the chat again for this. So you were suggesting maybe just ask people, what is their single greatest fear in fundraising?
Yeah, single greatest fear. We could say fear in asking. It can be either the ask or just fear around fundraising. Okay. And if hesitancy is a better word, like you might think, I'm not really fearful, but I'm hesitant. Where are you hesitant? I think that might help some people.
Yeah, fear. That word fear really does sometimes cause people to freeze up a little bit too, which is ironic. So please do go ahead and use that. We already have a couple responses. Donor fatigue, hesitancy due to being rude. We were talking about this before we began today.
Yeah.
Asking for the appropriate amount. So I guess the data, the information, the other intel. Let me see. Yeah, and we do hear you that donor fatigue, the sense that that's real for people. Hesitancy to ask, another donor fatigue. There's a lot of mention of that. The risk of offending, rejection, which I know you'll talk about today. Missing the mark, asking for too much or too little, timing.
Yeah.
Another thing I know you'll be addressing, making sure that we've done the proper homework prep, finding rather the right people and funders to ask, confidence in the message, not raising enough, rejection when trying to make the appointment. Oh, wow, we could talk about that all day too.
Oh, yeah.
Fear of an awkward conversation and saying the wrong thing or not knowing how to respond, maybe responding to objections.
Yeah.
You want to kind of respond to some of that?
These are so good and they're so on point. I mean, it's exactly what I hear when I'm talking with my groups is in several places. So it's just trickling throughout. I'm looking at rejection when trying to make the appointment. Just rejection to me is the number one. When I ask a group, it's rejection is always hands down there. And it's usually the number one that spurts out is that rejection.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, we don't want to be rejected in any way. I mean, we use that example of being picked for the softball team, when you're picking sides in a game in the backyard. That's rejection. I mean, rejection is just everywhere, and we do not want to be rejected. So I think the number one thing on the rejection is know that it is human. It's just that you're being human because you don't want to feel that a failure or hurt. It's just a hurtful thing. So I think the thing about on getting over rejection is in your role as a fundraiser, this is very important. I think it's number one is understanding your role. And what I learned early on that was the game-changing mindset with me is fundraising is not about me. So you have to get over the part that quit focusing on yourself. Stop focusing on you and the rejection part and focus on the donor. Like what are their interests and what are their desires? Why are they here? Why are they even interested in our organization? What is it? Did they have a parent with this disease, or did they receive a scholarship from this organization? Did they use the services that we offer? Do they wish they had used the services, that they wish they had something like this? You've got to go past thinking about you and start focusing on the donor and every part of the fundraising process. It will relax you when you start focusing on the donor. So the first thing on that rejection that I see rolling through that came up a couple of times is understand it's not about you. Understand, don't take it personally. If someone does reject you, and that may mean no, not now, or we've already committed our funds this year. It just means not now. They've committed their funds this year. It's okay. I'll put you in can you think about when can we get in the budget for next year? I mean, I remember saying that plenty of times. I'd say, if they said not now, or our budget is set, I said, well, when would be a good time so I could get in your budget, or we could talk further about this. It wasn't personal. And that I think will alleviate the rejection, and just start on that mindset. And then understand that on rejection, you've got to think about, you've got to know the person, the know, like, trust process that's got to have formed. You probably would get a rejected from a person if you didn't really know them and you asked them for money, and certainly for a large amount, you ask them, that you're going to get a long stare, and rightly so. So someone in here, I saw it run through saying being prepared. I saw the word prepared, or not being ready. I think the word was prepared I saw through. And that's what I think is one of the key things to do, is always be prepared for that ask. That means doing your homework and knowing all that you can about the donor. Jay, I can't remember if I told this story, but I think about this client I just started working with her, and she told me about a big donor in the community, and how that they had gotten the donor to come to a tour through somebody else, maybe a board member. And they asked her, this person going through the tour, for $10,000. And the woman just looked at her, and rightly so. I don't think she had ever really gotten to know her. There was that no, like, and trust. They had not corresponded. She was just going on a tour for the first time. The reason that fundraiser asked for money is because they had a big donor in front of them, and the big donor felt it. They felt they were being asked for money because they knew they were philanthropists. They were big donors in the community. So they felt like they were being asked for money because they were wealthy, and they were. You don't ask someone for money just because they're wealthy. You've got to connect with them and find out what they love about your organization, and then build that trust. So Jay, I'll stop there. Those are the two things that I saw running through here, and
Yeah.
lots of good stuff.
And there are others too that I'd love to touch on with you, but I want to make sure we give proper oxygen to that phrase you've used a couple times, and I've heard you use it before. Know, like, trust. Can you just talk about what that means, what that looks like for any of us?
Yeah. Well, it's just like a friend. You meet someone for the first time, you shake their hand, you're at an event or someone's birthday party, whether it's a personal thing or professional event. you meet someone for the first time, and you know how sometimes you connect with someone immediately, like wham, you've got so much in common and you connect fast. That's great. That's speeding up the know, like, and trust. But that doesn't always happen. You've got to allow time for someone first to know who you are. Hi, I'm Nancy. That's knowing who she is. I put a face with a name. And then liking her. Maybe they like your approach. They like the messages you're sending out. You're funny. You're very academic, and they like that. You're very research oriented. Whatever it is, you're showing different, sides of the organization and your personality. So that's I like this person. I like what I'm seeing. I like what this organization is doing. So you're liking the person, because we know people give to people, but they're given to the organization. If you leave, they stay. That's how you always want to think of it. But then the trust part, they have to come to a point where they've seen you in action, and they trust that you are going to do what you say you're going to do with the money. If you promise it's going to go for scholarships and it's given to these type of students, that you're doing that you're not going off to Hawaii with that money on a vacation, or that the executive director is being paid too much, or there's question about something. It's not just you, it's the whole organization. You're building trust. They are building trust with you and the organization. And until that happens, however fast that is, it may be really fast, but it may take longer. And some people take longer than others. And it's up to the donor what that speed is. Now, you can guide it along, but you go on a donor's timeline, not your timeline, not just because December 31st is here. That's your timeline. I don't really love focusing on timelines and we're trying to reach a certain $500,000 goal. It's really about the donor and their timeline and giving to something they want to give to. So that's what I mean, Jay, when I say know, like, and trust. It has to be there. I mean, it is. It's got to be there.
We can't assume that just because we are trustworthy that other people recognize that and therefore trust us. The same thing about their organizations, right? I mean, just because they love the work that we do doesn't mean they know how we're going to steward their funds. If they're taking money from their kids and giving it to our organization to do some specific thing, they probably need to see us in action a little bit before they know.
Yeah. And, philanthropists, and I work with large gift. I mean, I teach how to raise money through large gifts. That's where I focus, but it's really any money amount. But if you've got a philanthropist and that's what you're looking for, they are savvy. They're probably savvy philanthropists. They know how to get on sites and to look at your documents and your track record, and talking with other people who've been on the board before, and they may just pick up the phone and call a board member and ask them, or they may just see, this is a big one, is looking to see who else is giving to this organization. That is huge. They want to see people they admire, people they trust, that they've already vetted your organization for them. So it is important who's on your list, because we want others to vet. Like if Mary's my good friend or someone I admire, or the top leader in the community, and they have said yes to this organization, then I'm going to pause and look a little longer myself, or get to know them a little better. So yeah, we're talking about savvy philanthropists. We live in a very, very philanthropic country, and we may have others, Canadians on here. I know I get a lot of Canadians, is US and Canadian folks on here, and Canada is too. We live in a very philanthropic country and very giving community, and a very wealthy nation. We are a very wealthy nation, even in hiccup times like this COVID, that is still lingering a little bit. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, they've not come out of, I think they come out, in 2 months now, Jay, when the new numbers come out from the Indiana University,
Giving USA.
Yeah, Giving USA. But through COVID, that first year, numbers went up like over 5%, was just over like $23 billion more was given during COVID that first year. Amazing. That was in 2020. I don't know what 2021 numbers are. We're waiting to see what those are, but that's very telling. And, you might be thinking, where's the money? I want it. Well, there's a process to raising money and building trust and knowing the right the ask language, which is another part we haven't touched on yet, but getting over these first hoops of fear and resistance, which is a lot of times in our mind, most of the time, it's the first hurdle, is the mindset.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I know that a couple of questions came in while you were addressing that. And this one's very specific. I hope you don't mind if we jump onto it, because I'm sure this is what a lot of people contend with. What if you have a very large portfolio? Now, just don't drop out of your chair when you hear this, Nancy. 1,000+ people.
great.
Not a major gift portfolio, but mid-level, and can't get to know every single person that deeply. What are your...
Great question.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah, I love that you picked that out. Is that Martine? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Martine. But number one, congratulations on having 1,000+ people on your list, in your portfolio. And you said it's not a major gift portfolio, but a mid-level. That's okay. That's really, I like hearing that. I think that's fantastic. What the first thing I say when I read this is, you're right, you can't get to know every single person on the list. I would create a top 100 list. And here's the formula that I teach all my students is, before you put someone on your top 100 list, and some people call it Dream 100, whatever you call it, it's those individuals who are more likely to give to your organization and give to it in a big way. Mm-hmm. Since I teach large gifts, major gifts, I focus on the big givers, because that's the best use of anyone's time, is pulling in the large gifts. So the first point in the test is to make sure they are passionate about your cause, your mission. They could have landed in your portfolio because they were somebody's uncle and they just gave one time. Doesn't mean they are passionate about your cause. So you're looking for where the best use of your time. It doesn't mean they're bad people or they shouldn't be on your list. They're just not on your top 100. So they need to be passionate about your cause. The second is they need to be able to give at a significant level. And that's for you to decide what a gift that is meaningful. So some people, it may be, if you're brand new, a $250 gift is great. But if you've been at it a while and your organization's been in place, maybe $10,000 is where you start that you consider your top 100. That's totally up to you, and there's not a wrong or right. And that's for internal purposes to identify that threshold of what's a large gift or major gift. And the third test, and the 3-point test to put someone on your Dream 100 or top 100 list, is they must be philanthropic. And I kind of alluded to that earlier when we were talking, is just because someone is wealthy does not mean they're philanthropic. Just because someone has money doesn't mean they're philanthropic. I had a board member who was not philanthropic. And I learned, it took me forever. I just couldn't imagine. I mean, he wouldn't give personally, gave through other ways. There are other family members. And so don't waste your time there if you're small staff, or unless you have an army of people and you've got plenty of time, but most of us don't in fundraising. Look at, Martine, that's what I would do, is go through your list and use that 3-point test to whittle it down to 100 people. That's where you start. It doesn't mean you ignore the other 900. It's just, you've got to have a place to start, and then start building the relationships with the know, like, and trust. And there's things to do, but we can go into that later if we need to.
And I did want to ask you, Nancy, because we've got people here at probably a wide range of different kinds of organizations and different budgets. So for some places, the idea about, as you said before, always being prepared or knowing your donors, this kind of thing. Yeah. What are the ways that maybe a smaller organization can try and tackle that? Especially if you've got a big portfolio, like 1,000 people, how are they finding the people who have a passion for the cause? Is it all based on what they've given to you before? Is it what are the indicators you look for?
Yeah,
and I know that it may depend upon the tools and the budget, but what are some of the things that you do?
In a very basic, like square one level, is find out about the individual. So let's just take that example with the Dream 100. So Martine needs to get to know these 100, because she's gotten to know some of them, but not many. And so there's people that, like, I don't really know who this person is. How'd they get on the list? That kind of thing. This is so simple. And just don't overlook Googling someone's name. Just don't overlook that, because a person's passion and their love for an organization's mission leaves breadcrumbs. So a donor leaves breadcrumbs of things that they're passionate about. If I'm not passionate about animals and animal welfare, then you're not going to ever see me give to an animal welfare organization. So you're looking for breadcrumbs. Don't overlook looking on Google, just Googling. Go to social media and look for common friends. You can, and LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the first places to start, especially on LinkedIn. I think every nonprofit leader needs to be on LinkedIn. If you're trying to raise significant money, you need to be on LinkedIn. That's where the professionals are. And those are where a lot of board members are. They should be, because they're wanting to network. It's a networking, it's social media, but it's a more professional way. We can go deeper into looking at who gives to political campaigns, but let's start with simple things. The third thing is ask board members. Ask board members, do you know any of these people? Do you know any of these? And you can give them the $1,000 list to start, and it may be kind of long, but do you see anyone on here that or you think has the capacity, would be interested? And just ask that question. I would go to your board members. I mean, that's my top 3 that come to mind immediately that you absolutely need to be doing.
Right.
And I'll add one other thing. And I did this, Jay, when I started at the organization. I started the foundation part of an organization. They were like 90 years old, but they didn't have a foundation. That's what they wanted, that separate arm. So I asked the executive director to tell me who are the key players in this organization. It was 90 years old. Who's been around for a long time? Who's very passionate? I needed to know where to start. I just didn't know where to start talking with people, and I knew no one. So I started just asking internal people who had been with the organization for a long time. Who are the key players? Who do I need to get to know? And then I picked up the phone and introduced myself and just said, I wanted to say hi. Everyone said, I need to meet you. It was not asking for money. It was forming that know, like, and building trust eventually.
Yeah, that's so important. Just looking for those little opportunities to engage with people at a human level, whether it's a thank you phone call, which are very rare, or to, just call somebody up and say, I'm new here, or, exactly. But there probably is a little bit of hesitancy on the part of some donors, because they do have this experience of fundraisers who are just, like you said before, just they see somebody with money and they think that they're a piggy bank.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe one of the things, I know it's not the focus here today, but maybe what are some of the ways that you put someone at ease when you're having that conversation?
When you're having a conversation with a big donor, and how do you approach
so
them?
they can be themselves, and you can build that affinity.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you say that, I don't know if I've told this story with you, Jay. Maybe so. I can't remember, but this hits home when you say that. First, you've got to be yourself, and I'll tell you the story, which I was myself, and I didn't realize what was happening. But you've got to be yourself. You want to be professional. You always want to be professional everywhere you go. I mean, you're representing your organization. Even, if you're at your child's baseball game, you're still representing your organization, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But Jay, I was at my husband and I were staying in a friend's cabin on a river, and some people knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I know y'all are just visiting. We were having I think it's like Memorial Weekend. You want to come down here? We've got a neighborhood gathering, and we'd welcome you. I know we don't know you," that kind of thing. And so we were standing around meeting people and introducing ourselves. And so one of the gentlemen who was talking, I introduced myself, and he said, "I'm John Grisham." And I said, "Oh, well, that's an easy name to remember." And he kept talking. He was an older gentleman, and people were chatting with him. And then I ended up talking with him later, just the two of us, and just chatting with him. And he was where he was from and his kids and all this. And I got back to the cabin, and my husband said, "Wow, you sure became friends with Mr. Grisham. How was that conversation?" And I said, "Oh, he's such a nice guy." And he said, "You do realize who he is?" And I said, "No. I mean," he said, "That's John Grisham's father, the writer. That's his father." And I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, what did I say to him? Oh my gosh. And I just rewound in my head, what was my conversation? What did I say? Oh my gosh. The next morning we went to breakfast at this local diner, and we walked in the door and Mr. Grisham went, Nancy, come here. And he was like my best friend. And it was because this goes back to the point, I was myself. I didn't know who he was. And probably everyone else at that gathering knew who he was. I didn't know who he was. And I was just me. And I was just shooting, the small talk with him and chatting. And so, yeah, authenticity. I see that popped up, Bobby. Exactly. Just be yourself. And don't think about, so your question, Jay, was what happens, when you're approaching a big donor, a wealthy person, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm standing next to, so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
Just say something you would say to anyone. Do spark a conversation. And I know you feel like you're gonna trip over, and you get back to your cabin and say, oh my gosh, I said I've been just like the most stupid thing I could have ever come out of my mouth. But they'll probably remember you, maybe think it's funny. So I just think authenticity has got to be what you do. Just like Bobby said, just be yourself. But you've got to know your organization's mission and the priorities, and you've got to always have that language and talking points in your mind, but you're really focusing on that person. I was probably asking lots of questions about where he was from, his kids, and we were just like, I don't know what we talked about, but I formed a relationship quick with him. So that's my answer, is think about that story, is just be you. Just be you.
There's a note here from Sheila, who had said, approach with curiosity about them as a human. Wouldn't it be great if people did that with every single person?
Yeah.
I mean, every single day. And I know that the people who have impressed me most are the people who ask, when you come away from the conversation, you feel like they were interested in you.
Yes.
It's that old line from a rather cheesy movie, which, interested is interesting.
Yeah.
And it does help. And Jerry Panis used to talk about this a lot, about how it's, and he gave some example with Disraeli or something, but the point being that if you leave an event like that one, and a person feels like they were the most important person in the world, then you must have done something right, because you were interested in who they were, not what they had. That's so important. I know we had a bunch of other interesting points in here too, but I don't want to take you off track too much. I know you talked about rejection. I know other people did talk about timing a little bit. Did you want to touch on that? Because I know it's something that holds people back as well.
It does. I think that's a big one. I did see that. Someone just put timing. That's really good. And then probably others said it in different ways. But I think we hold back, and again, it's hesitancy, maybe not fear, but a little fear deep down. Is it too early? Have I waited long enough? Have I gotten to know them well enough? I mean, will they look at me funny? And it's again, how will they react? And someone said that in there, what will they do? No one ever laughed in my face. I'll just tell you, like, no one belittled me. No one was so rude. Nothing like that ever happened to me. But I think the timing part, I've already said it. I mean, it goes back to such core things, and we're repeating ourselves in a way, is you've got to have the know, like, trust. I said that. The other piece is, I call it VIP, and it's not VIP as a very important person. You've got to know a person's values, interests, and passions. Passions is where I land on. You've got to know what they're passionate about with your organization. You have to know why they even showed up. I said that a minute ago. Did they receive a scholarship? Do they wish they had an organization like this? Does their brother have a learning disability and this organization addresses it? And it's just so near and dear to their heart. Why is it? You cannot ask someone for money just because they're wealthy, just because they're standing in front of you, just because they've been in your database for a year. It's not that. It's that art of fundraising. It's the art of it. It's that Jay and I were talking about emotional intelligence earlier. So much of it is tapping into your emotional intelligence and thinking, does it feel right? How do I not come across rude? How do I focus? It's learning to listen and focus on the donor, it's always make it about the donor. If you focus on the donor and don't think about you and your organization needing this money, or that you're trying to meet a budget by December 31st or meet a goal, it's not about your meeting your goal. I hate to say it. It's not about December 31st. It's not about all those things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at the donor, focus on the donor.
I've got to ask you one thing about that. So when some people hear that, they're going to understand, the way I understand you, that you're talking about just kind of opening your heart, being yourself, seeing what opportunities present themselves, and then marrying those opportunities to the ones within our organization.
Yeah.
Other people might hear that and start to say, wait a minute, aren't you really just like ceding all your identity to the donor? Not you as a person, but the organization. Aren't you letting the donor determine what's going to happen? Aren't you going to be, won't there be a lot of strings attached? Won't they be changing the nature of what you do? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, good question. Absolutely. It's kind of like, what's it called? Supplementing a grant. You don't write to the grant. You make sure that grant is right for you. It's kind of that same thing. Right. No, you always have your top priorities in your head. Mm-hmm. Whether you're executive director, development director, or titles similar, that what the priorities are for your organization. I just left meeting with a one-on-one client, and they shared with me their update of their 5 top priorities. And I said, this is it for not only just this year, this is where you land every conversation. If you hop on an elevator with someone and they go, what's going on at your organization? Gosh, I just really don't know enough about it. And you tell a little bit about your mission or what your impact is. And they'll say, well, what are you focused on right now? You have those priorities in your head to always talk about. If someone wants to add a wing to your organization and it's not in alignment with where you're headed, where your strategic plan is, and even if you don't have a formal strategic plan, you know where you want to be going. Jay, you may have seen, I got it was in a Wall Street Journal. I get the Wall Street Journal and they do an insert, like a monthly, it's called the Wall Street Journal something. Well, there's an article about the Met and how they were returning money to a family. I won't even say it. It's in the whole article. But
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, it was a really great article. There's a lot to learn from that article. And it was just talking about the leadership, but they weren't in alignment. They were not in alignment. You don't take someone's money because they're telling you where it needs to go. You already know your board. That's what your board is there for. That's why you do planning. That's why you do have strategic plans. And I know these days, strategic plans are probably no more than 3 years out, but you could have some vision for the future 10 years out. It doesn't mean you don't think ahead. But if somebody comes in with this really harebrained idea and it's not in alignment, do a gut check, talk to your board chair and go, am I right that this is not something we want to be doing, right? And he or she will say, you're right. It's not that's not where we're going. We're not taking this organization by doing that. That's other organizations doing it. So it's a good question. You don't let the money push you and determine your priorities. You know what your priorities are because you have a board and you have planning committees. You should know that, and visionaries. Yeah, it's a great question.
And well, you've been talking to it in lots of different ways, which I think is so helpful because not only does it give us kind of a blueprint, but it also reinforces some of the messages in different ways, such as when you talk about this VIP thing being values, interests, and passions, because values are a part of that. If the people are aligned with our values as well, it's one thing to say, yes, they've given to cancer before, pediatric cancer, and that's great. And maybe they have resources, that's good too. But if their values are different from ours, we need to make sure we're aligned there as well.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. And you're trying to make a match here. You really, it's like bringing a board member on who's only filling a seat. I was doing a board training, and one thing I like to do, and I'm sure a lot of people have done it, and I go around the table toward the beginning and I say, what made you say yes to serving on this board? And I go around and I like it where I have enough time to let every person answer that showed up for that retreat. And I still remember where this gentleman was sitting in this room. It's just frozen in my mind. When I got to him, He said, because my corporation wanted me to. He was
Wow.
filling a check off. He checked a
Yeah.
box with his corporation, like, we need someone to serve on that nonprofit. Who's going to do that? He had no passion for the mission, the cause, the work they were doing. And the rest of the retreat, he said very little. And I think the rest of the board members like knew immediately, like, he's not with us. I mean, he's not one of us. And so it's that same way, whether it's a board member not fully on board, you want your donors on board. Just you want to enjoy your job. And just think, if you have donors who love what you're doing, they're excited when you give them an update. They're excited when you come with them and want some advice on something. They're excited when you send them like a happy Valentine card or Hershey Kisses, in the mail or at their doorstep. They're so excited when that happens because they're with you. You're being paid, but you're also passionate about the mission, and they are too. You just happen to be paid. So that's what you want.
And that part too, which I know, once again, I know that wasn't the focus today, but being passionate about this and conveying that passion is pretty inspiring. So it's important, whether it's by giving to the organization also ourselves, which I think is always a nice thing to do, or just being able to be enthusiastic about it. Every time we talk to someone, why we are there, why we're working there, just like the board member, why are they serving the board? Well, why are we working there? We don't have to work there.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Absolutely.
Jay, real quick, I'll add that and don't lose that thought is, I always say there's one secret ingredient to asking for money that makes a donor's face light up. And you've said it, it's passion in your voice, in your face, and in just your gestures, enthusiasm. That's the one secret ingredient when asking someone for money is your passion. You can flub over your words. You can just like make a mess of things, or a train can come by and they blow at the wrong time and they wipe out everything you're saying. But if they see the passion, you draw them in. You just draw them in and it just makes it work. So if you don't have the passion, take a gut check there and see if you're in the right place. Truly, you want to be passionate. Yeah.
That's right. It's a big sector. There are a lot of great causes, and we're not telling anybody to leave where they're working, just that, we hope you're excited about it. Yeah. And part of the reason for asking you about that, right on the tail of your reference to this person's kind of holding a corporate seat on a board, is because of a question that came in from Lorraine, who said, how would you approach inviting corporates to a fundraising event? And I think that might be an important question, but it kind of begs, if you don't mind, Lorraine, my adding to that, which is, how can we ensure that we're really engaging with the person, not just with the person who's wearing the jacket for the corporation? Or I didn't say that the right way, but
yes. And spot on. Absolutely. When you said that immediately, my first thought is you treat them like a human being, like Jay said earlier. You approach, I always say, whether it's foundation, corporation, individual, it's the same process. You get to know someone, they get to like you, you meet with them. It's a little more formal in a corporate process, the fundraising process. And they have rules and priorities, and you've got to meet the criteria thing. But how to get someone, invite corporates to an event, you invite them like a person. You just say, hey, Jay, do you realize we've got our XYZ signature event coming up next year? I know you were there last year, or you've never been. I want to personally invite you to come. And maybe they're a sponsor, maybe they're not a sponsor. Let's say they're not a sponsor. Treat them like a human being and say, come see what we're about. We're going to talk. I've got some, students who are going to do testimonials, or whatever your mission is. You're going to see a little more about us. I'd love for you and your spouse to come. Treat them like a human being. That's how you do it. But make a connection with something. Like when I'm thinking on a corporate, we set up a scholarship, a veteran scholarship, because the CEO had a son who was in the Iraq War, and he was a veteran, and we didn't have one. So you invite people based on, like, there's a veteran who's going to be talking, and I know you served. You've got to make some kind of connection. What is it? They're not just coming to taste the gumbo. They're coming for something they are interested in. Maybe they are have great gumbo. That would be okay. They're great cooks.
It'd be great.
Don't just, yeah, don't just be random about it. Make a meaningful ask or invitation for someone to come to your fundraising event. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, the only thing that didn't help is now I'm thinking about gumbo. So everybody knows I like gumbo. If I ever come and join you somewhere, that's the thing.
Good.
We did have a question here from Alan earlier about whether or not there's a rule of thumb for engaging major donors during or after business hours at work or at home. And I know that seems like a logistical detail, but maybe it's really not. And we've had a lot of conversations about this in our field about, do you see people over a meal? Do you go out and go to Starbucks? And I know this sounds, again, like logistics, but how do you approach this issue about where to find people and help people in kind of their safe space, a comfortable space where they can, again, be themselves?
Yeah, I think there's, not a lot off limits. I think about, I mentioned ballpark earlier. I just remember my kids were playing ball and I'd end up standing next to a donor or someone's parent. I think anytime, any place that's comfortable that you run into someone, always be out in your community. Now, I don't know, some of you are in small communities. Like I grew up in a very small community and then raised money nationally. So it was different. There was just different kind of fundraising. So I know that, but always try to get in front of people face to face. It goes back to like, I know Nancy, I saw her in person. That is valuable. When I was doing, I'm not sure I'm going around, I'm not trying to go around the question, but it just makes me think I was national, raising money nationally, and I did not have the budget to fly to every community, every even large city in the US. We did a zip code to see where most of our people were populated. Mm-hmm. And Chicago was a big one, and Atlanta, and we had different ones, DC. And so we would try to get there, but I couldn't cover, talking about your top 100, Dream 100, I just couldn't find them. So we had an event once a year, and if I could get them there, I would invite them. They would pay their own way, and I would tell them what's going on that's exciting, maybe a great speaker who's going to be there. I thought you'd like her because I know you like the environment, and she's talking about environmental issues. I would connect a dot. So I'd try to meet someone face to face at least one time, and then I'd ask them over the phone. I didn't have the money to fly out to San Francisco or to a small town in Kansas. I didn't have the money. So once I met them one time face to face, I felt I had the no checked off. Then they liked me. I tried to work as fast as I could to get to know them and focus, like Jay, you were talking about, on the conversation where you walked away, they walk away and they felt like they were heard. So I tried to speed up the and trust, as quickly as possible. But I know when you ask that question, whoever it was, that some of you are in small communities and some are national, and you might not can get in front of them. But yes, Starbucks and anywhere that the donor is comfortable and convenient, but ask them. Don't make assumptions. Yeah, ask them. I think that if that's a short answer, ask them.
Yeah, ask them. But it does beg another question, which no one's asking, but I have to, because we're still in the middle of this. There's now, people in Toronto said it's a sixth wave. So I'm hoping that we're all safe and healthy as we go forward. And there's a big conference coming up where a lot of people will be going for AFP. But I just talked to someone earlier today, and they said their conference in October is all virtual. So it's like this.
Yeah.
Now, you just talked about how budgets were always one of the things that we had to consider when we talked about going and visiting with people. Yeah. But the reality is there are 100 reasons why we might not be able to see someone, whether they're right next door or 1,000 miles away. Yeah. So have you been able to, and have you, as you've instructed people, been able to encourage your students to use what we're doing today as a way to engage, and then eventually, when the time is right, invite people to give?
Yeah. Do what is comfortable for the donor.
Right.
Communicate with your donors or your potential donors, those on your top 100 list, the way they are comfortable. My parents are 88 and 89, and they would never get on a conference. They would never get on this. But they would on the phone, and they may allow someone in the house or to drop by for a second. Like someone wants to drop by and bring something by, they would love that because they're very homebound. But it's know your donors. know your donors. Remember, it's just all about them. It's all about them. So if you know that someone is comfortable hopping on, or if you don't know, just ask. Say, are you comfortable? Do you want to hop on a Zoom? It doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to. If you are, I can send you a link, or let's go with the old-fashioned phone. That's fine with me too.
Right.
And if someone does texting, you know, as you get to know someone, if they text, that's great. If you can get their cell number, that's wonderful. Because most everyone is texting. Even, you know, seniors love to get a picture or a little short video behind the scenes of something. So the short answer is ask.
Right.
Ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's
We
good.
did have a question from Mary Sue, who had said, what are good ways to ask when dealing with those who are quiet or not talkative?
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
You know, again, Mary Sue, the answer is talk about things that will light them up. So that's, again, good ways to ask when dealing with those who are quiet. So if you're ready to ask, I'm guessing that question has to do with the ask. You've got, you know them. You already, obviously, you know some people, you got some in your mind that they're introverts, they're very quiet and not so talkative. You do want to be a good listener, and it's probably harder if they are very quiet and you feel like you're constantly pulling information out of them. But if you find, you know this, I've seen it, someone who's very, very introvert, very quiet, lovely people, but when you find that nugget, whether it's that grandchild or when they first met their husband or whatever it is, find that nugget that just lights them up. What are they doing with their time? You want to know, or just, I mean, say, Mary, what did you do during COVID when we were all in so much? Were you like me and I just got on the computer, or I learned to cook? What did you do? And then be quiet, and she'll answer something. I mean, they'll answer something. So ask open-ended questions, find out what it is that they love to do. What are the extracurricular activities? What was it like growing up in this town? I'm not from here, kind of thing. Just like ask. Curious. Somebody said, you said it, Jay, be curious. Just be curious and then be quiet. Just be quiet. You should be talking less of the time. You shouldn't be talking like all I'm doing right now.
Well, it's our job today. We're supposed to be talking. So, and I won't take credit for the curious quote because that came from the group. So thank you again. I'm sorry I'm not attributing it, but that was really important. I love that. And speaking of curiosity, you've mentioned a couple of times about students, meaning your own students. And so I know we've got a few more minutes, but I want to make sure I ask you, so you're teaching some courses for people. Do you mind telling us at least one of the ones that's coming up so people can learn more about it?
Yes, I have. Actually, you just hit me. I have a webinar tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central. I'll put the link in the chat. And it's called The 3 Biggest Mistakes Fundraisers Are Making That Are Killing Your Fundraising, and what to do about them. It's not just telling you what's killing your fundraising, but it's tips on what to do. And then at the end, like most webinars, we share how you can work with us. So I share how you can work with me. I offer a couple of times a year, and it's open right now, an 8-week coaching program. It's a group coaching program in the core of Ultimate Guide to Major Gift Fundraising. So it's over 8 weeks. It's for brand new people who are tipping their toe into large gift fundraising, or people who have been at it a while that want a reset or a refresher on what they should be doing and bringing in large gifts, major gifts, big gifts. I use those words interchangeably. So that's happening right now. So if you go to that link, it's how you can sign up for the webinar that's tomorrow, the last one I have. And if you can't make it, go ahead and sign up, because I think my team sends out the replay. So you can get the replay on. So that's happening right now. And that's how I serve students, is I focus on large gift fundraising. And I did not know what I was doing when I started. So I understand when someone's fearful of that and of large gift fundraising, like, oh, I can't ask a large gift donor for money, but you can, because I did it and I didn't know what I was doing. I started with fear. So that's how I design my course, my programs is, if I can do it, you can do it. And let me show you how. So I teach you how to be a better fundraiser. So that's that. And then I also have group coaching later. If a lot of my students stay with me, and I offer it at a very affordable price because I work with a lot of small and medium-sized nonprofits who have small budgets. So that's what's offered right now. So I'd love to have you all hop on and join me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central, or just hop on, you can hear the replay.
Now, well, and since some people may be hearing this in a replay, I'll at least read the the URL so people can learn more about this. It may be after the fact, but as you just heard, some of this is recorded. Plus, Nancy, you've been a good friend to all of us in the field. So I'm sure that if someone hears this in October, they'd still love to be able to connect with you. And so that is at fundraisingmaximized.com, fundraising. And if you're tuning in from other parts of the English-speaking world where they spell things differently, that's fundraisingmaximized with a Z.com /fundraising. So do check that out, and you can learn more about Nancy's work there. I do want to make sure that if there's one more question, maybe we can tackle it, and then see if you have any kind of parting thoughts today. I know we had a question from Stephanie earlier, who had said, if you have met with a donor before with no ask, no final solicitation, how do you gear up for another visit where you will? And do you let them know when you're making the appointment that you'll be asking? So you talked before about authenticity and directness and all this, but also that these people are not, bank accounts for us. So how do you approach this in a way that's both transparent, but comfortable?
Yeah. Oh, great question. I'm glad you asked that, Jay, and whoever asked that.
Stephanie.
Here's the thing: no surprises. People, and particularly donors, philanthropists, don't like surprises. I told the story at the beginning where the woman was caught off guard by the $10,000 ask when she was on a tour. It's like she was caught off guard. She didn't have the know, like, and trust, and it was a failed attempt. Use your common sense and emotional intelligence. That was not the right thing to do. You don't want surprises. So what I would do is say, hey, Nancy, I have got something I want to talk with you about. I'm so excited, and I think you will be too. It's how you can support ABC. You've been so supportive in the past, or maybe the person's never supported, or you've been to our events. They have to have something. They can't just be cold. They've either been to your events, or they've shown up on a free webinar that you've offered. There's some reason. You have to have some reason, or they've done a tour, or they came with a friend. There's something. But just say, I know you like such and such. No surprises. Just always preface it with, I'm excited. You remember I told you about your passion. You can come to the table, to the conversation with passion. It's infectious. It is just infectious. And then you've got their curiosity up. Is Nancy has something she wants to ask me, and I know it's about a gift, but I wonder what it is. What is it she's so excited about for me? So you're focusing on them. She's excited about this for me. You've put it all on them, and you're excited about it. And you should be, because you aligned it. You learned what their values, interests, and passions are. And you go, oh my gosh, this is perfect for Mary. This is perfect for Nancy. I can't wait to ask her. I still remember a donor I asked, and she couldn't wait for me. We were in a big event, and I just said, I want to get with you at some point. She found me. She said, I'm ready to talk. I want to hear what it is you have to say. And it was like a 3 or 5 day event. And she wanted to know right then what I was. And it was a gift. She knew it was a gift I was going to be asking her. So I hope that helps, Jay, and whoever asked that. No surprises is the short answer.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to do it. Don't hold back on setting up a meeting where you're offering an opportunity that people want to hear, because you're worried that they might say no.
Yeah, they're not. No. You've done your homework, and they're not. And these are your friends, and you've set yourself up for success. If you've done your homework, you built know, like, and trust. You know what their interests are. They're waiting for you to ask. Don't say no for them by not asking. If you don't ask, you're saying no for them. Give them the chance to say, I can't do it right now, or I'd love that. I love that you thought of me. They're going to say that. I really appreciate your thinking of me, but I've got 3 kids in college. Of course, you should know that a little bit, like, don't go way out when they're not giving anywhere else. And it's, so look for those breadcrumbs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're leaving them behind probably for a purpose, whether they are intending to do it consciously or not, that people want to
Exactly.
be heard.
Yeah,
Right? So,
exactly.
thank you so much for this, Nancy. Really appreciate you coming back and doing this again.
Yeah.
Obviously, people needed to hear it. People are responding. Thank you, everybody in the room, for hanging out with us and asking these great questions. I'm going to encourage you to look to the YouTube channel that DonorSearch has set up, where this recording will be, so you can share it with colleagues. But also, if you're not on the list for these sessions, please just go to donorsearch.net and put yourself on the list. If you don't know how to do that, or you don't feel like it and you still want to contact us, now you know how to reach Nancy. If you'd like to reach me for any reason, and I hope you will consider letting us know when there are things you want to see and hear in this series, just send me a note. You can do that at that's Jay, at donorsearch.net. I have other email addresses. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, etc.
Yeah.
But you can find me right there. Send me a note. Tell me what you want to see and hear. You'll find that there is not only a great series of conversations like this one with Nancy today, but also we have CFRE accredited webinars, which we run regularly. We have another one coming up soon with Amy Eisenstein, I think you'll enjoy. We have also an entire podcast series where we have discussions with people like the one I interviewed yesterday, who is Lisa Greer, who's a donor, who will tell you all about her experience being on the receiving end of solicitations, mirroring much of what Nancy has been teaching us today. So I think you'll probably enjoy that, to hear the two different sides kind of coming together on the things that we could all do a bit better if we just focused on being ourselves and listening first and making it about the other. So I want to thank all of you. Thank again, Nancy Rieves, and encourage you to stay healthy out there. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.